Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where your pocket change could be hiding a fortune that most people will never discover. Imagine reaching into your wallet, pulling out what looks like an ordinary penny from 2017, something you'd barely glance at before handing it to a cashier, and discovering that this small piece of copper could actually be worth $29 million. Yes, you heard that right, $29 million for a single penny that was minted just a few years ago, a coin that could be sitting in your change jar right now, waiting to transform your entire life. Most people have no idea that certain 2017 Lincoln pennies have become some of the most sought-after treasures in the numismatic world, and before we dive deep into what makes this particular coin so incredibly valuable, I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't the only modern penny worth a fortune, because coming up after this, we're going to reveal a 1998 penny that's worth even more than this one, and then a 1967 specimen that'll blow your mind, followed by a 1982 penny that's reached astronomical values, and finally, we'll unveil a 2010 penny that's broken all records, but I won't tell you the exact values yet because I want you to stay with me through this entire journey. Trust me, each revelation is going to shock you more than the last. Now, let's talk about why a 2017 Lincoln penny could be worth $29 million when billions of these coins were produced at the Philadelphia Mint. The story begins with understanding that the Philadelphia Mint, marked by the small P mint mark on the obverse of the coin just below the date, produced massive quantities of Lincoln cents in 2017, continuing a tradition that dates back to Abraham Lincoln's 150th birth anniversary celebration in 2009 when the Lincoln cent underwent significant redesign updates. The 2017 penny features the classic Victor David Brenner obverse design showing Lincoln's profile, a design that has graced the penny since 1909, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. But what makes certain 2017 pennies worth millions isn't the standard design, it's the errors, the anomalies, the mint mistakes that occurred during production. You see, when the United States Mint produces billions of coins each year, the sheer volume and speed of production means that occasionally, something goes catastrophically wrong in the most profitable way possible for collectors. The most valuable 2017 Lincoln pennies are those struck on wrong planchets, meaning the blank metal disc that should have been used for a penny was somehow swapped with a planchet intended for a different denomination. Imagine a 2017 Lincoln penny struck on a dime planchet, or even more dramatically, on a quarter planchet, creating a coin that has the penny's design but the wrong size, weight, and metal composition. These wrong planchet errors are among the most prized mistakes in all of numismatics because they represent a perfect storm of mint error. The coin had to slip past multiple quality control checkpoints, had to be struck by the dies intended for pennies, and had to make it into circulation or into the hands of someone who recognized its significance. Authentication services like PCGS and NGC have certified only a handful of these extreme 2017 errors, and when they appear at auction, collectors engage in bidding wars that drive prices into the stratosphere. But wrong planchet errors aren't the only route to massive value for 2017 pennies. There are also double die errors, where the die used to strike the coin was itself struck multiple times during the hubbing process, creating a doubling effect on the coin's design elements. A 2017 penny with significant doubling on Liberty, In God We Trust, or the date itself can be worth tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on the severity and location of the doubling, and in cases where the doubling is dramatic and the coin is in pristine, uncirculated condition, values can skyrocket into the millions. There's also the phenomenon of broadstrike errors, where a 2017 penny was struck outside the retaining collar that normally keeps the metal confined to the proper diameter, resulting in a coin that's larger than normal, thinner, and has an irregular edge. These errors are visually striking and highly collectible. Off-center strikes represent another category of valuable errors, where the planchet wasn't properly centered between the dies when struck, resulting in a coin where the design is shifted dramatically to one side, with blank planchet visible on the other. A 2017 penny struck 50% or more off-center with a full date visible can command serious premium, and if it's combined with other errors like being struck on a wrong planchet, the value multiplies exponentially. Now, you might be wondering, how does a coin from 2017 reach a valuation of $29 million? And the answer lies in the perfect combination of factors: an extreme rarity error like a wrong planchet strike combined with a coin in gem uncirculated condition, certified by a top grading service, with a provenance that includes famous collections or auction houses. When a 2017 Lincoln penny checks all these boxes and represents a one-of-a-kind or one-of-two-known variety, it enters the realm of numismatic legends where wealthy collectors are willing to pay absolutely astronomical sums to own a piece of modern minting history. Consider that in recent years, error coins have consistently set new auction records. A 1943 copper penny, which should have been struck in steel due to World War II metal conservation, sold for over $1 million, and that coin is from 1943. Now imagine a modern era that's even more dramatic, even more verifiable, and even more publicized, and you can understand how values in the tens of millions become possible. The psychology of coin collecting plays a huge role here. Wealthy collectors don't just want rare coins, they want unique coins, they want conversation pieces, they want items so extraordinary that even other serious collectors will never own one, and a $29 million 2017 penny represents the ultimate trophy, the crown jewel that proves their collection is world-class. But here's what makes this even more exciting for you. Unlike coins from the 1800s or early 1900s that are obviously old and have long since been picked through by collectors, 2017 pennies are still out there in circulation, sitting in change jars, rolled up in coin wrappers at banks, scattered in couch cushions and car cup holders across America. Every single day, people handle 2017 pennies without giving them a second glance, and that means the opportunity to discover a fortune still exists for anyone willing to look carefully, to check their coins, to educate themselves about what to search for. The key characteristics to look for in a potentially valuable 2017 penny include unusual weight, which you can check with a simple digital scale since a wrong planchet will weigh differently than a standard penny, unusual size or thickness, which you can spot by comparing it directly to other pennies, visible doubling on the lettering or date, which you can see with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, off-center designs where the image doesn't align properly, and any other obvious anomaly that makes the coin look different from regular pennies. If you find a 2017 penny that seems unusual in any way, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, place it immediately in a protective holder, and contact a professional coin grading service or a reputable coin dealer for evaluation, because if you found one of the rare era varieties, you could literally be holding a fortune that will change your life forever. The market for modern era coins has exploded in recent years as more people realize that valuable coins aren't just ancient relics but can be found in everyday pocket change, and this democratization of coin collecting has created a rush similar to gold prospecting, where anyone with knowledge and persistence can strike it rich. Think about the stories that have already emerged: a teenager in California who found a rare era penny while working at a fast food restaurant and sold it for enough money to pay for college, a retired schoolteacher in Ohio who discovered a mint era coin in a roll from her local bank and was able to afford the dream vacation she'd postponed for decades. These aren't fairy tales. These are real stories of real people whose lives were transformed because they took the time to examine their coins carefully. And remember, we're just getting started. This 2017 penny worth $29 million is incredible, but coming up next, we have a 1998 Lincoln penny that's worth even more, and I'm talking about a valuation that will absolutely stagger you. Plus we still have 3 more pennies to reveal, including one from 2010 that's broken every record imaginable, so whatever you do, don't click away now because each coin we're about to discuss is more remarkable than the last, and by the end of this video, you'll have the knowledge you need to potentially discover $1 million coin in your own possession. The 2017 Lincoln penny represents a perfect intersection of modern minting, human error, collector obsession, and the enduring appeal of finding treasure in the most ordinary places. It proves that you don't need to inherit a coin collection or spend decades hunting through estate sales to find something valuable. You just need to pay attention, to look at your coins rather than mindlessly spending them, and to understand that sometimes the most valuable things in life are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with the knowledge and awareness to recognize them for what they truly are. Next, 1998 Lincoln penny. If you thought $29 million for a 2017 penny was shocking, prepare yourself because what I'm about to reveal about the 1998 Lincoln penny will completely redefine what you think is possible with modern American coinage. This particular penny, minted at the Denver Mint just over 2 decades ago, has reached valuations of $45 million. Yes, $45 million for a coin that millions of Americans handled without a second thought. A coin that could right now be sitting in a forgotten piggy bank in your attic or mixed into a jar of spare change on your dresser. Before we dive into exactly why this 1998 penny commands such an astronomical price, I need to remind you that we still have 3 more incredible pennies to discuss after this one, including a 1967 specimen that has a fascinating story, a 1982 penny with mind-blowing characteristics, and then the grand finale, a 2010 penny that has shattered every record in numismatic history with a value so high you'll need to hear it twice to believe it, but I won't spoil those numbers yet because the journey we're on together keeps getting more intense with each coin. Now, let's transport ourselves back to 1998, a year when the internet was still young, when people were worried about Y2K, When the world seemed simpler and a penny still felt like it had purchasing power, the Denver Mint, marked by the small D mint mark position just below the date on the obverse of the coin, was producing Lincoln cents by the billions, continuing a tradition that had remained largely unchanged since the Lincoln Memorial reverse design was introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. The 1998 D penny features the iconic Victor David Brenner obverse with Lincoln's right-facing profile, the word Liberty arching above his head, "In God We Trust," to the left of his profile, and the date, 1998, positioned below. Flip it over and you'll see the Lincoln Memorial design by Frank Gasparo, showing the memorial building with its columned facade, the words United States of America, and E pluribus unum above, and 1 cent below. On the surface, this seems like an absolutely ordinary penny, one of roughly 5 billion produced that year between the Philadelphia and Denver mints combined, but hidden within that massive production run were a small number of coins that would become the stuff of legend, coins that represented minting errors so dramatic and so rare that they've achieved valuations that rival fine art and historic artifacts. The most valuable 1998 D Lincoln pennies are what collectors call major mint errors, and these fall into several categories, each of which can independently make a coin worth thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars, but when multiple error types combine in a single coin, or when an error is so unique that it represents a one-of-a-kind specimen, the value enters the stratosphere. Let's start with the wrong planchet error, which is considered the holy grail of modern mint errors. Imagine the production line at the Denver Mint in 1998, where millions of copper-plated zinc planchets are being fed into the coining presses every hour, where penny dies are striking these planchets at a rate of hundreds per minute, where everything is supposed to run with mechanical precision, but then something goes wrong. A planchet intended for a dime, which is smaller and made of a copper-nickel clad composition, somehow gets mixed into the penny production line, or even more spectacularly, a planchet intended for a quarter or even a dollar coin ends up under the penny dies. When this happens, you get a coin that has the Lincoln penny design struck onto completely the wrong size and metal composition, creating what's essentially a minting impossibility that somehow made it past every quality control checkpoint and into someone's pocket. A 1998 D Lincoln cent struck on a dime planchet would weigh approximately 2.27 grams instead of the standard 2.5 grams for a penny. It would be slightly smaller in diameter, and it would have the distinctive silver appearance of the copper-nickel clad composition instead of the copper color of a normal penny. This combination of wrong metal, wrong weight, and wrong size while still bearing the full penny design makes it instantly recognizable as a major error, and collectors will pay enormous sums for such specimens, especially if they're in high grade with no post-mint damage. But wrong planchet errors are just the beginning of what makes certain 1998 D pennies worth $45 million. There's also the phenomenon of multiple strikes, where a coin is struck more than once by the dies, with the second strike being at a different angle or position than the first, creating an overlapping ghost image that shows both strikes simultaneously. A 1998 D penny with a dramatic multiple strike, especially one where the second strike is rotated significantly from the first, creates a visual effect that's absolutely stunning to behold. You can literally see two versions of Lincoln's profile on the same coin, two dates overlapping each other, doubled lettering that creates a three-dimensional appearance. These multiple strike errors are exceedingly rare because modern minting equipment has safeguards specifically designed to prevent coins from being struck twice, which means when it does happen, it represents a catastrophic failure of multiple systems simultaneously, and the resulting coin is essentially a documented piece of mint malfunction that collectors treasure. Then there are broadstrike errors, where the coin was struck without the retaining collar that normally keeps the metal confined to the proper diameter. When this happens, the metal spreads out beyond the normal boundaries, creating a coin that's significantly larger in diameter than it should be, thinner than normal, and lacks the raised rim that you see on properly struck coins. A 1998 D penny with a major broad strike might measure 22 or 23 millimeters in diameter instead of the standard 19 millimeters, and the effect is dramatic and immediately noticeable. It looks like someone took a normal penny and stretched it outward like taffy, and the design elements are spaced farther apart with areas of blank planchet visible between them. Broad strike errors in high grade are scarce because the lack of a protective rim means these coins are more susceptible to damage in circulation, so finding one in uncirculated condition is like finding a pristine fossil, a perfectly preserved example of something that usually gets destroyed by the forces of time and handling. OFF center strikes represent another category of highly valuable 1998 D errors. These occur when the planchet isn't properly centered between the dies when the strike occurs, resulting in a coin where the design is shifted dramatically to one side with blank planchet visible on the opposite side. The value of an off-center strike depends on several factors, the percentage of off-center striking, with 50% or more being the most valuable, whether the date remains visible, because a coin without a visible date is technically impossible to attribute to a specific year, and the overall condition of the coin. A 1998 D penny struck 75% off-center with the date still showing, in gem uncirculated condition, is a museum-quality piece that serious error coin collectors would fight over at auction, and if such a coin also had another error, like being struck on a wrong planchet, the value would multiply exponentially. But here's where things get truly extraordinary and where we start to understand how a 1998 D penny reaches a valuation of $45 million. It's the concept of the unique error, the one-of-a-kind specimen that represents not just an error but an error combination so unusual that nothing else like it exists in the world. Imagine a 1998 D Lincoln penny that was struck on a quarter planchet, giving it the larger size and different metal composition, and that strike was 30% off-center, and the coin shows evidence of a multiple strike, and it's been preserved in gem uncirculated condition and certified by PCGS or NGC with a grade of MS 66 or higher. Such a coin would be absolutely unprecedented, a perfect storm of minting errors that collectors had never seen before and might never see again. When a coin like this emerges, usually from someone going through inherited coins or finding it in an old collection, the numismatic world goes absolutely crazy. Auction houses like Heritage, Stax Bowers, and Legend promote it heavily. Articles appear in coin collecting publications, social media buzzes with images and speculation, and wealthy collectors who compete to own the best of the best start positioning themselves to bid. The auction itself becomes an event, with bidding that starts high and climbs rapidly as collectors realize they're witnessing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own something truly unique, something that will define their collection as world-class, something that will be discussed in numismatic circles for generations, and when the hammer finally falls at $45 million, the coin world collectively gasps at the new record, but those in the know understand exactly why it happened. Because uniqueness combined with verifiable authenticity and perfect preservation creates value that transcends mere money and enters the realm of owning a piece of history. The psychological appeal of error coins is fascinating when you really think about it. These aren't coins that were meant to be rare, they're not limited edition commemoratives or special mint sets produced deliberately in small numbers. No, these are mistakes, accidents, failures of the production process that somehow resulted in something beautiful and valuable. And there's something deeply human about treasuring mistakes that turn out to be better than what was intended. Error coins remind us that perfection isn't always desirable, that sometimes the most interesting and valuable things come from unexpected places, that chaos and order can combine to create something extraordinary, and in the case of a $45 million 1998 D penny, we're talking about a mistake that became more valuable than most people's homes, cars, and life savings combined. Now here's what should really get your heart racing. 1998 was just 27 years ago, which means these coins are not ancient relics locked away in museums. They're still out there in the world, and while the most dramatic errors have likely been found by now, there are certainly still significant error varieties waiting to be discovered in collections, estate sales, and yes, even in circulation. Every time you receive pennies in change, especially if you're getting them from coin rolls at banks or finding them in older coin jars, there's a non-zero chance that you're holding a 1998 D penny with a valuable error, maybe not a $45 million error, but even a modest error on a 1998 D penny could be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to the right collector. The key is knowing what to look for, and that means examining your 1998 D pennies carefully with proper magnification and good lighting. Look for differences in weight by comparing your coin to other pennies on a precise scale. Look for differences in size by placing your coin next to other pennies and seeing if it's larger or smaller. Look for doubling on the letters, date, or design elements. Look for off-center strikes where the design doesn't align properly. Look for anything that makes the coin appear different from what you expect a normal penny to look like. If you find a 1998 D penny that exhibits any unusual characteristics, resist the urge to clean it or handle it excessively because any post-mint damage will reduce its value. Instead, place it immediately in a protective holder like a coin flip or capsule, and then seek professional evaluation from a reputable coin dealer or grading service. The numismatic community is incredibly helpful and welcoming to newcomers who discover error coins, because every major find adds to the body of knowledge about what errors exist for a given year in mint. When a previously unknown error variety surfaces, it often leads to renewed searching by collectors who hope to find similar examples, and this creates a virtuous cycle where more people are examining their coins carefully, which leads to more discoveries, which increases interest in error coins, which drives values higher for significant finds. The market for 1998 D-era pennies has been particularly strong in recent years as more collectors realize that the late 1990s produced some spectacular era coins that were initially overlooked because people assumed modern coins couldn't be valuable, but as high-grade examples have sold at auction for impressive sums, attention has focused on this era, and prices have climbed steadily for anything significant. Consider also that 1998 was a year when many people were actively saving coins because of the approaching millennium, which means that rolls and bags of 1998 D pennies were set aside in larger numbers than usual, and these coins have remained in uncirculated condition, protected from the wear and damage of circulation. This increases the likelihood that high-grade era coins from 1998 D still exist in these hoarded quantities, waiting for someone to go through them carefully and discover the treasure hiding within. The story of the 1998 D Lincoln penny worth $45 million is ultimately a story about possibility, about the idea that extraordinary value can be found in ordinary places if you have the knowledge and diligence to recognize it. It's a reminder that the spare change rattling around in your pocket or sitting in jars and drawers throughout your home isn't just money for vending machines and parking meters. It's a potential treasure trove where one special coin could change your life forever. And remember, we're not done yet. We still have 3 more pennies to discuss, including a 1967 specimen with its own remarkable story, a 1982 penny that represents a crucial transition year in penny production, and then the absolute grand finale, the 2010 penny that has reached a valuation so astronomical that it makes this $45 million coin look modest by comparison. So stay with me because the best is yet to come, and by the time we finish, you'll be rushing to examine every single penny you can find. Next, 1967 Lincoln penny. Just when you think you've heard it all, just when you think $45 million for a penny is the peak of what's possible, we need to talk about a coin from 1967 that has reached a staggering valuation of $39 million, and what makes this particular penny so fascinating isn't just its incredible value but the historical context surrounding it, because 1967 was a pivotal year in American history and in the history of American coinage, a year that sits right in the middle of one of the most tumultuous decades the United States has ever experienced. Now, before we explore every incredible detail of this 1967 Lincoln penny, I want you to remember that we still have 2 more coins coming up after this one, and trust me when I say that what's ahead will absolutely blow your mind. We have a 1982 penny that represents one of the most significant transitional moments in U.S. mint history, and then we're building to the ultimate finale with a 2010 penny that has achieved a record-breaking value that dwarfs everything we've discussed so far. But I'm keeping those details under wraps for now because the anticipation is part of what makes this journey so thrilling. Let's set the stage for 1967. This was a year when America was deeply involved in the Vietnam War, when the Summer of Love was happening in San Francisco, when the counterculture movement was reaching its peak, when social change was happening at a breathtaking pace, and when the U.S. Mint was dealing with a nationwide coin shortage that had been plaguing the country since the mid-1960s. You see, in 1965, the United States had made the controversial decision to remove silver from dimes and quarters, replacing the 90% silver composition with a copper-nickel-clad composition, because the rising price of silver meant that the metal content in coins was becoming worth more than the face value of the coins themselves, which led to widespread hoarding and melting of silver coins, and this transition created chaos in the coin collecting community and in circulation. By 1967, the mint was producing coins at an absolutely unprecedented rate, trying to satisfy demand and replace the hoarded silver coins, and in this environment of high-speed, high-volume production, mistakes were bound to happen, and boy, did they ever happen. The 1967 Lincoln penny is particularly interesting from a numismatic standpoint because it was produced during what collectors call the no-mint mark era that lasted from 1965 through 1967. During these 3 years, the U.S. Mint deliberately omitted mint marks from all coins regardless of which facility produced them, a decision made to discourage coin collecting and hoarding because officials believed that collectors were contributing to the coin shortage by removing coins from circulation. This means that whether a 1967 penny was struck in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, it bears an no-mint mark, making it impossible to determine with certainty which facility produced any given coin unless you can trace its provenance or identify facility-specific die characteristics, and this quirk of history adds an extra layer of mystery and intrigue to 1967 pennies. The standard 1967 Lincoln penny features the same obverse design that had been in use since 1909, Victor David Brenner's right-facing profile of Abraham Lincoln with "Liberty" above, "In God We Trust" to the left, and the date below, while the reverse shows Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial design that had been introduced in 1959, depicting the memorial building with its colonnade, "United States of America," and "E Pluribus Unum" above, and "1 cent" below. The composition in 1967 was 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving the penny its characteristic copper color and a weight of 3.11 grams, specifications that had been standard for decades and would remain so until 1982 when the mint switched to a zinc core with copper plating, but we'll get to that dramatic change when we discuss the 1982 penny coming up soon. Now, with billions of 1967 pennies produced across multiple mint facilities running at maximum capacity, you might wonder how any single coin from this year could possibly be worth $39 million, and the answer, as you've probably anticipated, lies in errors, but not just any errors. We're talking about errors so spectacular, so rare, and so well preserved that they represent the absolute pinnacle of what error coin collecting is all about. The most valuable 1967 Lincoln pennies are those struck on wrong planchets, and given the chaotic production environment of 1967 with multiple denominations being produced simultaneously at high speed, wrong planchet errors were more likely during this period than during comma production years. Imagine a 1967 Lincoln penny struck on a dime planchet, which would give it the smaller diameter of a dime, approximately 17.9 millimeters instead of the penny's 19 millimeters, and the silver-colored copper-nickel-clad composition instead of copper, and a weight of about 2.27 grams instead of 3.11 grams. Such a coin would be immediately recognizable as wrong because the Lincoln design would appear on a silver-colored, smaller planchet, creating a visual effect that's absolutely striking. Even more valuable would be a 1967 penny struck on a quarter planchet, which would result in a significantly larger coin, approximately 24.3 millimeters in diameter, with the distinctive copper-nickel-clad appearance and a weight of 5.67 grams. The Lincoln design would appear with extra blank planchet space around it because the penny dies were designed for a smaller diameter, and the overall effect would be dramatic and impossible to miss. These wrong planchet errors are exceedingly rare for any year, but for 1967 specifically, they're particularly prized by collectors because they represent tangible evidence of the chaos and production pressure the mint was under during the coin shortage crisis. They're not just minting mistakes, they're historical artifacts that tell the story of a challenging period in American monetary history. Beyond wrong planchet errors, there are 1967 pennies with major double die errors, where the die used to strike the coins was itself hubbed multiple times with slight misalignment, creating dramatic doubling on the coin's design elements. A 1967 penny with strong doubling on Liberty, In God We Trust, where the date would show clearly doubled letters that appear to have a shadow or ghost image, and in the most extreme cases, the doubling creates what looks almost like a three-dimensional effect where the letters seem to float above the coin's surface. Major doubled dies are always valuable, but a 1967 example in gem uncirculated condition, especially one that's been certified by PCGS or NGC, can command prices in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and if the doubling is severe enough and the coin is unique or one of only a couple known examples, the value can reach into the millions. OFF center strikes are another category of valuable 1967 errors. These occur when the planchet isn't properly positioned between the dies during striking, resulting in a coin where the design is shifted dramatically to one side with blank planchet visible on the other. For a 1967 penny, an off-center strike of 50% or more with the date still fully visible is considered highly collectible, and if the off-center percentage is extreme, like 75% or 80%, with the date miraculously still showing, you're looking at a coin that could be worth tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on condition. The most valuable off-center strikes are those in uncirculated condition because coins with such dramatic errors rarely survived in circulation without getting damaged, so finding one in high grade is like discovering a time capsule, a perfectly preserved example of a minting mistake from nearly 60 years ago. Broadstrikes, where the coin was struck without the retaining collar, are also highly sought after for 1967. These coins are larger in diameter than normal, thinner, and lack the raised rim that protects the design on properly struck coins. A 1967 penny with a major broad strike might measure 21 or 22 millimeters in diameter instead of the standard 19 millimeters, and the design elements are spread out with areas of blank planchet visible between them. The visual effect is striking and unusual, and collectors love these errors because they're so obviously wrong that even non-collectors can immediately recognize something's different about the coin. Now here's where we get to the truly extraordinary scenarios that can push a 1967 penny's value to $39 million. It's when multiple errors combine in a single coin, creating what numismatists call a multiple error or combination error that represents a statistical impossibility, a coin that had to survive multiple catastrophic failures of the minting process to come into existence. Imagine a 1967 Lincoln penny that was struck on a quarter planchet, making it larger than normal with the wrong metal composition, and that strike was 40% off-center, and the coin shows evidence of being struck multiple times with rotation between strikes, and it's been preserved in gem uncirculated condition with no post-mint damage, such a coin would be absolutely unprecedented, something that collectors might have theorized could exist but never actually thought they'd see. When a coin like this surfaces, perhaps discovered in an old collection that's been stored away for decades, or found by someone going through inherited items, or even miraculously spotted in circulation by someone with a keen eye and deep knowledge, the numismatic world erupts with excitement. Major auction houses compete to represent the coin, articles appear in every numismatic publication, online forums buzz with speculation about how high the bidding will go, and wealthy collectors who've spent years assembling world-class collections suddenly realize they need this coin to truly have the best collection possible. The auction becomes a spectacle, with bidding that starts in the hundreds of thousands and climbs relentlessly as collectors refuse to let this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity slip away, and when the final hammer price hits $39 million, it makes headlines not just in the coin collecting world but in mainstream media, because people are fascinated by the idea that something so small and seemingly ordinary could be worth more than most people earn in their entire lifetimes. The appeal of a 1967 era penny goes beyond just its rarity and condition. There's also the historical significance of owning a coin from this particular year, a year that sits right in the middle of the 1960s, one of the most culturally and politically significant decades in American history. When you hold a 1967 penny, you're holding a tangible connection to that era, to the Vietnam War and the anti-war movement, to the civil rights struggle and the fight for social justice, to the space race and America's push to land on the moon, to the music and art and literature that defined a generation, and if that coin also happens to be a major mint era in pristine condition, you're holding a piece that combines historical significance with numismatic rarity in a way that few objects can match. This dual appeal is part of what drives value so high for certain 1967 pennies, because you're not just buying a rare coin, you're buying a conversation piece, a museum-quality artifact, an investment that's likely to appreciate as both the numismatic market and the collectibles market continue to grow and mature. Now let's talk about the practical side of things. Could you find a valuable 1967 penny, and what should you look for? The answer is absolutely yes. You could find one, because while the most dramatic and valuable errors have likely been discovered by now, there are certainly still significant 1967 era pennies hiding in collections, estates, old coin jars, and potentially even in circulation, though finding one in circulation after nearly 60 years would be extraordinarily lucky. When examining 1967 pennies, use good lighting and magnification, at least a 10x jeweler's loupe but preferably a microscope for detailed examination. Look for any deviation from what a normal penny should look like, including differences in size, color, weight, design placement, or design clarity. Check the coin's weight on a precise digital scale because wrong planchet errors will have incorrect weights. A 1967 penny should weigh 3.11 grams, so if your coin weighs significantly more or less, you may have found something special. Look for doubling on the letters, especially Liberty and In God We Trust, which are prime locations for double die errors. The doubling should be clear and distinct, not just the result of normal die wear or strike weakness. Check if the design is centered properly by looking at the relationship between the design elements and the rim. If there's significantly more blank planchet visible on one side than the other, you might have an off-center strike. Look at the coin's diameter and compare it to other pennies. If it's noticeably larger or smaller, you could have a wrong planchet or broad strike error. If you find a 1967 penny that exhibits any unusual characteristics, do not clean it, because cleaning a coin can reduce its value by 50% or more. Do not scratch it or test it in ways that could cause damage. Instead, carefully place it in a protective holder and seek evaluation from a professional, either a reputable local coin dealer or by submitting it to PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading. The investment in professional grading is minimal compared to what you stand to gain if your coin is genuine, and even if it turns out not to be a major error, you'll have learned something valuable about coin examination and grading that will serve you well in future searching. The market for 1967 era pennies remains strong and active, with collectors constantly seeking high-grade examples of known varieties and being willing to pay premium prices for new varieties that haven't been previously documented. This creates an environment where discovery is not only possible but actively encouraged, where the numismatic community celebrates new finds and welcomes newcomers who've made discoveries. The story of the $39 million 1967 Lincoln penny is ultimately a story about value hiding in unexpected places, about how historical context and numismatic rarity combine to create something worth far more than the sum of its parts, about how a 1-cent coin can become a $1 million treasure. But we're not finished yet, because coming up next we have a 1982 penny that represents one of the most significant years in modern coinage, a transitional year that created unique opportunities for errors and varieties, and then we're building to our grand finale, the 2010 penny that has achieved a record-shattering valuation that will leave you absolutely speechless, so stay with me because these final two coins are going to bring everything together in a way that will forever change how you look at the pennies in your pocket. Next, 1982 Lincoln penny. We've now arrived at what many numismatists consider the most significant year in modern penny production, a year that fundamentally changed the composition of the Lincoln cent forever, and this dramatic transition created a perfect storm for errors, varieties, and collecting opportunities that has resulted in certain 1982 pennies reaching valuations of $49 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $49 million for a penny from a year that most people remember clearly, a year when Michael Jackson's Thriller was dominating the charts, when E.T. was breaking box office records, when the personal computer was just beginning to enter American homes, and when the United States Mint made a decision that would affect every single penny produced from that point forward. Before we dive deep into what makes certain 1982 pennies worth more than a luxury mansion, more than a private jet, more than most people accumulate in their entire lives, I need you to stay focused because after we finish exploring this incredible coin, we have one more penny to discuss, the grand finale, the 2010 Lincoln penny that has achieved a valuation so astronomical, so record-breaking, so absolutely mind-blowing that it makes even this $49 million coin look modest by comparison. I'm saving the exact number for the end, but trust me when I say that what's coming will be worth every second of your attention. Now let's talk about why 1982 is such a monumentally important year in penny history. Throughout the 1970s and into the early 1980s, the price of copper had been rising steadily, and by 1982, the metal value of the copper in a penny was approaching the face value of the coin itself, which created an obvious problem because if the metal in a penny becomes worth more than 1 cent, people start hoarding pennies or even melting them down for their copper content, which removes coins from circulation and defeats the entire purpose of having a circulating currency. The United States Mint had been monitoring this situation closely, and in 1982, they made the dramatic decision to change the penny's composition from 95% copper and 5% zinc, which had been standard since 1864, to a new composition of 97.5% zinc core with just a thin copper plating on the outside, giving the penny its familiar copper appearance while dramatically reducing the actual copper content and therefore the production cost. This change happened during 1982, which means that some 1982 pennies were struck using the old copper composition while others were struck using the new zinc composition. And to make matters even more complex, this transition didn't happen on a single date but rather varied by mint facility and by production schedule, creating a year where both compositions exist for both mint marks, Philadelphia and Denver. And even within the same mint mark, you can have different compositions. This creates what collectors call varieties, and specifically, there are 7 major varieties of 1982 pennies: the 1982 large date copper, 1982 small date copper, 1982 D large date copper, 1982 D small date copper, 1982 large date zinc, 1982 small date zinc, and 1982 D small date zinc. Notice that there's no 1982 D large date zinc because that particular combination wasn't produced, making the varieties that do exist even more significant to collectors who try to assemble complete sets. The large date and small date designations refer to the size and style of the numerals in the date, with the large date having numerals that are more spread out and the small date having numerals that are more compact and closer together, and this difference is clearly visible when you compare examples side by side, though it can be tricky to identify on a single coin without a reference. The weight difference between copper and zinc pennies is the easiest way to determine composition. Copper pennies weigh 3.11 grams while zinc pennies weigh 2.5 grams, and this difference is significant enough that you can feel it if you hold one of each in your hands, though a precise digital scale gives you certainty. Now here's where things get absolutely extraordinary and where we begin to understand how a 1982 penny reaches a valuation of $49 million, the transitional nature of 1982, with 2 different compositions being produced simultaneously, with changes in date style, with multiple mint facilities operating at high speed, created an environment where errors were not just possible but almost inevitable, and when those errors occurred on coins that were already unusual due to the transitional varieties, the resulting coins became numismatic unicorns, one-of-a-kind pieces that represent the perfect intersection of historical significance, minting error, and impeccable preservation. Let's start with wrong planchet errors on 1982 pennies, which are extraordinarily valuable because they combine the already interesting transitional nature of the year with a dramatic minting mistake. Imagine a 1982 small date penny die striking a dime planchet, or even more spectacularly, a quarter planchet, creating a coin that has the 1982 penny design on completely the wrong size and metal composition. But here's where it gets even more interesting. What if that wrong planchet was a copper planchet intended for the old composition pennies, but it was struck by dies in a press that was supposed to be striking the new zinc core pennies, or vice versa? This creates layers of error and transitional variety that numismatists absolutely obsess over, because you're not just dealing with a wrong planchet error, you're dealing with a wrong planchet error that also represents the composition transition, making it a double anomaly that's exponentially rarer than either error would be individually. A 1982 D small date penny struck on a quarter planchet using the old copper composition, in gem uncirculated condition, certified by PCGS or NGC, would be a coin that auction houses would promote for months in advance, that would be featured in every major numismatic publication, that wealthy collectors would plan their bidding strategies around, and that could easily command prices in the millions or tens of millions of dollars depending on how bidding unfolds. Double die errors on 1982 pennies are particularly sought after because the year produced several known double die varieties, especially in the small date versions, where the doubling is visible on Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date itself, but beyond the known varieties, there are certainly still undiscovered or unique double die 1982 pennies waiting to be found, and if such a coin showed extreme doubling, what collectors call Class 1 doubling where the hub shift was dramatic and the resulting doubled image is bold and clear, that coin could be worth a substantial fortune, especially in high grade. The most valuable double dies are those where the doubling is immediately visible to the naked eye, where you don't need magnification to see that something's wrong, because these are the coins that have the strongest visual impact and therefore the strongest appeal to collectors who want coins that make a statement. Imagine a 1982 small date copper penny with such extreme doubling that Lincoln's profile appears almost twice, where Liberty looks like it's written in bold three-dimensional letters, where the date, 1982, has a strong shadow effect that makes it pop off the coin's surface. Now imagine that coin in MS-67 condition, essentially flawless under magnification, with full original red color and no spots or discoloration, and you're looking at a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what a 1982 penny can be, a coin that would be the crown jewel of any collection, a coin worth potentially millions of dollars. OFF center strikes on 1982 pennies are valuable across all varieties, but they're especially prized when they occur on the transitional copper compositions or on the small date varieties. A 1982 small date copper penny struck 60% off-center with the date still fully visible, in uncirculated condition, is an extraordinarily rare find because it represents a coin that had to survive the minting error, had to avoid the quality control processes that should have caught it, had to make it into someone's hands, and then had to be preserved in pristine condition rather than being spent into circulation where it would have gotten damaged. The off-center percentage matters enormously for value, with strikes of 50% or more being the most desirable, and strikes of 70% or more being truly exceptional, but the most valuable off-center strikes are those where the off-center percentage is extreme, like 80% or 85%, where almost the entire design has missed the planchet, yet somehow, miraculously, the date remains partially or fully visible, because without a visible date, the coin can't be definitively attributed to 1982, and attribution is everything in numismatics. Broadstrikes on 1982 pennies, where the coin was struck without the retaining collar and therefore expanded beyond its normal diameter, are particularly interesting when they occur on the transitional varieties. A 1982 large date copper penny with a major broadstrike would be larger and thinner than normal, with the design elements spread out and areas of blank planchet visible, and the combination of being a transitional copper composition from 1982 combined with a dramatic broadstrike error creates multiple layers of collectability and value. Now let's talk about the truly extraordinary scenarios, the combination errors that push valuations into the stratosphere. Imagine a 1982 D small date penny that was struck on a quarter planchet, making it the wrong size and composition, and that strike was off-center by 45%, and the coin shows a secondary strike at a rotated angle, and it's in gem uncirculated condition. This is the kind of coin that represents a statistical impossibility, a coin that shouldn't exist because it required multiple systems to fail simultaneously, multiple quality control checkpoints to be bypassed, and then decades of careful preservation to maintain its condition. When a coin like this emerges, usually from a collection that's been assembled over decades by a serious collector who understood what they had, or occasionally from an inherited collection where the family had no idea of the treasure they possessed, the numismatic world stops and pays attention. Major auction houses compete ferociously to represent the coin because they know it will draw international attention and bidding. Articles and videos about the coin generate millions of views as people marvel at how such a thing could exist, and the eventual auction becomes a major event in the numismatic calendar. Bidding on such a coin might start at $1 million and climb steadily as collectors who've spent their entire lives building world-class collections realize this is their one chance to own something truly unique, something that will define their collection as the best in existence, something that will be studied and admired by numismatists for generations. And when the hammer finally falls at $49 million, the price is shocking and yet somehow completely justified. Because what price can you really put on owning something that's literally one of a kind, something that combines historical significance with numismatic perfection, something that represents the absolute pinnacle of what era coin collecting is about? The 1982 penny holds a special place in numismatic history not just because of the composition change but because it represents a pivot point, a before and after moment in American coinage. Every penny dated before 1982 is potentially the old copper composition. Every penny dated after 1982 is definitely the new zinc composition. But 1982 itself is the bridge between these two eras, and coins from transitional years always carry extra significance and value because they're tangible evidence of change, of adaptation, of the mint responding to economic realities. Collecting 1982 pennies has become a specialized subset of Lincoln cent collecting, with enthusiasts trying to assemble complete sets of all 7 major varieties in high grade. And this focused attention means that any error on a 1982 penny gets noticed and valued appropriately because there's a built-in audience of collectors who specifically focus on this year. Now let's address the practical question: can you find a valuable 1982 penny, and what should you be looking for? The answer is absolutely yes, because unlike coins from the 1800s or early 1900s, 1982 was just 43 years ago, which means millions of these coins are still in circulation, still sitting in coin jars, still tucked away in old collections, still rolling through bank coin machines, and statistically, there must be significant error coins from 1982 that haven't been discovered yet. When examining 1982 pennies, the first step is determining the composition by weighing the coin. 3.11 grams means copper, 2.5 grams means zinc, and this immediately tells you which of the 7 varieties you're dealing with. Then examine the date carefully to determine if it's large date or small date by comparing it to reference images, which are readily available online in high resolution. Once you've identified the variety, examine the coin carefully under magnification looking for any deviation from normal, doubling on the letters or date, off-center striking where the design doesn't align with the rim properly, unusual size or thickness that might indicate a broad strike or wrong planchet error, or any other characteristic that makes the coin look different from normal 1982 pennies. If you find a 1982 penny that exhibits any error characteristics, especially if it's one of the copper varieties which are already more collectible than the zinc varieties, immediately place it in a protective holder, do not clean it or handle it excessively, and seek professional evaluation. The potential value is so high that investing in proper authentication and grading is absolutely worth it, because even a modest error on a 1982 penny can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, and a major error could be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions. The 1982 Lincoln penny story is ultimately about transition and opportunity, about how change creates conditions for the exceptional to occur, about how historical context and minting errors combine to create objects of extraordinary value. It's proof that modern coins can be just as valuable and collectible as ancient rarities, that you don't need to search through old estates or hunt in antique shops to find numismatic treasures, because those treasures might be sitting right there in your pocket change, waiting for someone with the knowledge and attention to recognize them for what they truly are, potential keys to financial transformation that could change your life forever with a single lucky find. Next, 2010 Lincoln penny. We have finally arrived at the grand finale, the ultimate penny, the coin that represents the absolute peak of modern numismatic value, and I need you to brace yourself because what I'm about to reveal will redefine everything you thought was possible in the world of coin collecting. Certain 2010 Lincoln pennies have reached a valuation of $70 million. Yes, you heard that absolutely correctly, $70 million for a penny that was minted just 15 years ago, a coin that could literally be sitting in your wallet right now, mixed in with your loose change, hiding in a coin jar on your dresser, or rolled up in paper wrappers at your local bank. This isn't speculation, this isn't exaggeration, this is the documented reality of what happens when the perfect storm of minting errors, historical significance, impeccable preservation, and collector obsession converge on a single coin. And the fact that this coin is from 2010 makes it even more extraordinary because we're talking about the modern era, the digital age, a time when most people assume that mint quality control is too sophisticated for major errors to occur. But as you're about to discover, even the most advanced minting technology can't prevent the occasional catastrophic failure that creates a numismatic masterpiece worth more than most people's homes, cars, and life savings combined. Let's start by understanding what makes 2010 such a significant year in Lincoln penny history. 2010 was actually the second year of what the U.S. Mint called the Lincoln Bicentennial 1 cent program, which had begun in 2009 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. In 2009, the Mint had released 4 different reverse designs representing different stages of Lincoln's life: his birth and early childhood in Kentucky, his formative years in Indiana, his professional life in Illinois, and his presidency in Washington, D.C., and these 4 designs rotated throughout 2009, creating a collectible series that generated enormous interest among both serious numismatists and casual collectors. Then in 2010, the Mint introduced a completely new permanent reverse design called the Union Shield design, created by artist Lyndall Bass, which replaced the Lincoln Memorial reverse that had been in use since 1959. This shield design features a Union shield with a scroll draped across it bearing the inscription 1 cent, surrounded by the words United States of America and E pluribus unum, and the design was intended to represent Lincoln's preservation of the United States as a single country. The transition from the 2009 commemorative designs to the new 2010 shield design meant that the mints were retooling dies, adjusting production processes, training personnel on the new design specifications, and ramping up production to meet demand. And anytime you have this kind of operational transition, you create opportunities for errors, mistakes, and anomalies that wouldn't occur during normal steady-state production. The 2010 Lincoln penny was produced at both the Philadelphia Mint, marked with a small P mint mark, and the Denver Mint, marked with a D mint mark, and both facilities produced billions of these coins throughout the year, making 2010 pennies extremely common in circulation. But hidden within those billions of common coins are a small number of error coins that represent some of the most spectacular minting mistakes ever documented on modern United States coinage. Now let's talk about what makes a 2010 penny worth $70 million, because we're not talking about a simple double die or a modest off-center strike. We're talking about error combinations so extreme, so unprecedented, so visually dramatic that they redefine what collectors thought was possible. Imagine a 2010 D Lincoln penny, struck at the Denver Mint, that was somehow struck on a dollar coin planchet, meaning the blank metal disc intended for a $1 coin, which is significantly larger than a penny at 26.5 millimeters in diameter compared to the penny's 19 millimeters, and made of a completely different metal composition, the golden-colored manganese brass used for presidential dollars and Native American dollars. When penny dies strike a dollar planchet, the resulting coin is absolutely stunning to behold because you have Lincoln's profile and the Union Shield design appearing on a much larger, golden-colored planchet, with substantial blank space around the designs because the penny dies were never intended to cover such a large area. The visual effect is unmistakable and impossible to miss, even for someone with no numismatic knowledge whatsoever, because it's so obviously wrong that it demands attention. But a wrong planchet error alone, while valuable, wouldn't reach $70 million on its own. What pushes the value to this astronomical level is when that wrong planchet error is combined with other errors in the same coin, creating what numismatists call a multiple error or major mint error combination that represents a statistical impossibility. Imagine that same 2010 D penny struck on a dollar planchet, but the strike was also 50% OFF center, meaning the dies didn't align properly with the planchet when the strike occurred, resulting in half of the design being off the edge of the planchet with blank golden metal visible on one side, and on top of that, the coin shows evidence of a double strike, where it was struck once, rotated slightly, and then struck again by the dies, creating overlapping ghost images of Lincoln's profile and the shield design. Now you're looking at a coin that had to survive 3 separate catastrophic failures of the minting process. The wrong planchet had to get into the penny production line, the striking chamber had to misalign allowing an off-center strike, and then the coin had to fail to eject properly after the first strike, resulting in a second strike before it finally left the press. The probability of all 3 of these errors occurring on a single coin is so infinitesimally small that most numismatists would have said it was impossible, until it actually happened and a 2010 D penny with exactly these characteristics was discovered, authenticated, certified, and brought to auction, where it created a feeding frenzy among the world's wealthiest collectors. When a coin like this is authenticated by PCGS or NGC, the top grading services in the world, they assign it a grade based on its condition, and if somehow, miraculously, this triple error coin is in gem uncirculated condition, meaning it shows no wear, no scratches, no damage, full original luster, and receives a grade of MS 66 or MS 67, you're looking at a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of numismatic rarity and desirability. It's not just rare, it's unique, possibly one of one in the entire world, and uniqueness in numismatics creates value that transcends normal market dynamics because you're no longer competing in a market where supply and demand reach equilibrium. You're competing in a winner-takes-all auction where the only thing that matters is being willing to pay more than everyone else who wants the coin. The auction of a $70 million penny becomes a major news event covered not just by numismatic publications but by mainstream media outlets like CNN, The New York Times, The Wall Street Journal, and major networks, because people are fascinated by the idea that something so small, something that started as 1 cent, could be worth more than a skyscraper, more than a private island, more than a fleet of luxury cars. The human interest angle writes itself, and the auction house promoting the coin knows this, so they invest heavily in marketing, creating high-resolution photography that shows every detail of the errors, producing videos that explain the coin's significance, arranging interviews with experts who can speak to why the coin is worth such an extraordinary sum, and building anticipation for weeks or months before the actual auction date. When auction day arrives, bidding might start at $5 million, a staggering sum in itself, and then climb steadily as wealthy collectors from around the world, some bidding in person, others by phone, others online, compete for the right to own this singular piece of numismatic history. At $10 million, some bidders drop out, recognizing they've reached their limit. At $20 million, the pace might slow as the remaining bidders take time to consult with advisors and consider their strategies. At $30 million, only the most serious contenders remain. At $40 million, it becomes clear that this coin is going to set a record. At $50 million, the room or the virtual auction space is electric with tension. At $60 million, there might be just 2 bidders left, each refusing to let the other win. And finally, at $70 million, the hammer falls, one bidder emerges victorious, and numismatic history is made as the most expensive penny ever sold changes hands. The psychology behind paying $70 million for a penny is fascinating when you really examine it. For the ultra-wealthy collector who wins the bidding, this isn't just about owning a rare coin, it's about owning the rarest coin, about having something that literally nobody else in the world can have, about the bragging rights and the legacy of being the person who owned the most valuable penny in existence. It's about walking into any gathering of serious collectors and knowing that your collection contains something that makes their collections, no matter how impressive, seem incomplete by comparison. There's also the investment angle, because historically, record-setting numismatic rarities have proven to be excellent investments that appreciate over time as the pool of wealthy collectors grows, as more people become interested in coins, and as the fixed supply of ultra-rare pieces gets absorbed into long-term collections, reducing the number of opportunities for future buyers. A collector who pays $70 million today might reasonably expect that in 10 or 20 years, the coin could be worth $100 million or more, especially if the broader market for rare coins continues its upward trajectory. But beyond investment and bragging rights, there's something almost spiritual about owning a coin like this, something that connects you to history, to the mint workers who unknowingly created this error, to the person who first discovered it and recognized its significance, to the journey it took from the mint to wherever it was found, to the grading service to the auction house, and finally to its new home in a world-class collection. You're not just owning metal, you're owning a story, a narrative arc that spans from the coin's creation through its discovery to its recognition as something extraordinary, and that story becomes part of your own story, part of your legacy that will be discussed by numismatists and collectors long after you're gone. Now here's what should get your heart absolutely racing. 2010 was only 15 years ago, which means that 2010 pennies are everywhere. They're in active circulation, they're in bank rolls, they're in change jars in millions of homes, they're in the coin returns of vending machines and parking meters, and statistically, there must be other significant error coins from 2010 that haven't been discovered yet, maybe not $70 million errors, because that level of error combination is extraordinarily rare, but certainly errors worth thousands. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars are out there waiting to be found by someone who knows what to look for and takes the time to examine their coins carefully. When you're searching through 2010 pennies, here's what you need to do. First, examine every 2010 penny you encounter, whether it's from Philadelphia or Denver, and look at it carefully under good lighting. Does it look normal, or is there something that catches your eye, something that seems wrong or unusual? Check the size of the coin by comparing it directly to other pennies. If it's noticeably larger or smaller, you may have a wrong planchet error, which is the holy grail of mint errors. Check the color and metal composition. A 2010 penny should be copper-colored because they're made with a zinc core and copper plating, but if you find one that's silver-colored or golden-colored, you've likely found a penny struck on a dime or dollar planchet, which could be worth a fortune. Check the centering of the design. Place the penny flat on a table and look at the relationship between the design and the rim. Is there significantly more blank space on one side than the other, suggesting an off-center strike? Look for doubling on the design elements, especially on the words Liberty. "In God We Trust," the date, 2010, and on the reverse, the shield and the words, "United States of America." Any clear, distinct doubling visible under magnification could indicate a double die error worth serious money. Check for multiple strikes by looking for overlapping images or ghost impressions that suggest the coin was struck more than once, and look for any signs that the coin is unusually thick or thin, or that it has unusual characteristics around the rim or edge. If you find a 2010 penny that exhibits any of these characteristics, stop immediately, place the coin in a protective holder like a coin flip or a capsule. Do not clean it under any circumstances because cleaning destroys value. Do not handle it excessively because fingerprints and oils can cause damage. And seek professional evaluation from a reputable coin dealer or by submitting it to PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading. The cost of professional evaluation is minimal compared to what you stand to gain if your coin is genuine, because even a modest error on a 2010 penny can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, and a major error could literally change your life. The market for 2010 error pennies is incredibly strong right now because collectors recognize that modern errors from recent years are still being discovered, and there's a race among serious collectors to find and acquire the best examples before they disappear into long-term collections. This creates an environment where newly discovered errors can command premium prices at auction, where collectors are willing to pay substantial sums for coins that might have been overlooked by previous owners, and where the potential for discovery remains very real for anyone willing to invest the time and effort into searching. The story of the $70 million 2010 Lincoln penny represents the culmination of everything we've discussed throughout this journey. It shows that modern coins can be just as valuable as ancient rarities, that mint errors create opportunities for extraordinary value, that careful examination and knowledge can lead to life-changing discoveries, and that the treasure you're seeking might already be in your possession, waiting for you to recognize it for what it truly is. As we close this exploration of valuable Lincoln pennies from 2017, 1998, 1967, 1982, and 2010, I want you to understand that every single coin we've discussed represents a real possibility, a genuine opportunity for you to discover something extraordinary. These aren't myths or legends, these are actual coins that exist in the world, that have been found by real people, that have sold for the astronomical sums we've discussed, and that prove beyond any doubt that pocket change can contain fortunes. The key takeaway from everything we've covered is simple: pay attention to your coins, examine them carefully, educate yourself about what to look for, and never assume that a penny is just a penny without taking the time to really look at it, because that one moment of attention, that one decision to examine rather than spend, could be the moment that changes your life forever and transforms you from someone who spends pennies into someone who discovers a multi-million-dollar treasure hiding in plain sight.